Good day. Our topic this morning is research and methodology. Now, the objectives of today's topic includes first, to recognize the similarities between primary and secondary sources of data. Second, to contrast probabilities versus non-probability sampling techniques. Third, to understand different sampling techniques. Fourth, to know the target population. And the last one is to recognize what is reserved instrument and its validation. Now, there are sources of data. First, we have the primary source and secondary source of data. But first, we have to discuss what is this all about primary source of data. So these are the data originated by the researcher for the specific purpose of addressing the research problem survey. So most people often think of primary sources as being written, but they may also be in other forms, including the interviews, recordings, paintings, or even computer software, email, correspondence, and web pages. So what are the examples of these primary source of data? So we have personal papers, letters, whether it is for personal or business purpose. Third, we have also the diaries and journals, which could be for personal and business purposes. We have also the photographs and paintings, sketches, original maps, and so on and so forth. We have also the advertisements, posters and banners, and also the memoir. And we have also the another example of the primary source of data is the genealogy records, both personal or family and from public records. And we have also the new footage, so which includes the new reels, videotapes or audio tapes, and the news articles also written at time of the event. Also, we have the speeches which are contemporaneous with the event, oral histories, minutes of meeting related to the event. Furthermore, we have also the vital records, which could be the birth and death records, census records, court records, tax records, property records, church registers, or public and private records. We have also the material artifacts, such as the physical objects or evidence related to the event, including articles of clothing, furnishings, coins, stamps, buildings, tools, weapons, and etc. So we have also the creative works such as the novels, essays, poetry, music, art, and audio or video recordings. We have also the computer software, email archives, and the web documents. So the legal status of in each an event occurred or which prevented it from occurring, including relevant municipal, regional, national, and international laws, treaties, agreements, and other legal regulatory protocols. So the system of law valid in a particular country at a particular time, in other words, is a primary source for analyzing what happened in that country during that period. So those are some examples of primary source of data. Now, how about this secondary source of data? So these are the data collected uh, from some purpose other than problem at hand. So secondary sources are data that already exists, such as previous research, official statistics, mass media products, diaries, letters, government reports, web information, historical data, and information. Now, when conducting research, it is almost always impossible to study the whole population that you are interested in. So it would be extremely timely and costly to survey the entire population. So as a result, researchers use samples as a way to gather data. So a sample is a subset of population being studied. It symbolizes the larger population and is used to draw inferences about the entire population. So it is a research technique widely used in a feasibility study as a way to gather information about a population without having to measure the entire population. Now, uh, there are techniques of sampling. So we have the probability sampling, or we call also scientific sampling, and we have the non-probability sampling or the non-scientific sampling. So what is the difference between the two? So for scientific sampling, it is a sampling technique where each element of the population has a fixed probabilistic chance of being selected for the sample. Now, how about this non-scientific sampling or the non-probability sampling? So it is a sampling technique where the samples are gathered in a process that does not give all individuals in the population equal chances of being selected. So it does not use chance selection procedures rather than personal judgment of the researchers. So what are these sampling techniques? So what are the inclusions in both probability sampling techniques and non-probability sampling techniques? So for probability sampling techniques, so this include simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, and what the inclusions of the non-probability sampling techniques include the convenience sampling, judgemental sampling, quota sampling, snowball sampling, and purposive sampling. Now, let us discuss each of these sampling techniques. So, let us discuss first the probability sampling techniques. So, first, we have this what we call simple random sampling. So, what is this simple random sampling? So, this is the basic sampling method assumed in statistical methods and computations. So, in order to collect simple random sample, so each unit of the target population is assigned a number. So, a set of random numbers is then generated, and the units having those numbers are included in the sample. So for instance, the population is composed of 1,000 people and the choice is a simple random sample of 50 people. So first, each person is numbered 1 through 1,000. Then a list of 50 random numbers is generated, typically with a computer program, and those individuals assigned those numbers are the ones included in the sample. So every element is selected independently of every other element. So, and the sample is drawn by the random procedure from sampling frame. So this procedure is equivalent to a lottery system in which names are placed in a container. The container is shaken, iuyog siya, and the names of the winners are then drawn out in an unbiased manner. So next is the systematic sampling. So in a systematic sampling, the elements of the population are put into a list, and then every nth element in the list is chosen systematically in inclusion in the sample. So to ensure against any possible human bias in this method, the researcher should select the first individual at random. This is technically called a systematic sample with a random start. So the sample is chosen by selecting a random starting point by then picking every nth element in succession from the sampling frame. So as you can recall in your research methodology in your during your senior high school, you may encounter the formula I is equal to capital N divided by small letter n, wherein the small letter I uh, defi- signifies as the interval, while the capital letter N is the population size, and the small letter n is the sample size. So the third sampling is the stratified sampling. So what is this stratified sampling? So it is a sampling technique in which the researcher divided the entire population into different subgroups or strata and then randomly picks the final subjects proportionately from the different strata. So this type of sampling is used when the researcher wants to emphasize specific subgroups within the population. So for example, in order to get a stratified sample in university students, the researchers would first organize the population by class rather, and then select appropriate numbers of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So this guarantees that the researcher has sufficient amounts of subjects from each class in the final sample. So the fourth is cluster sampling. So this is the two-step probability sampling technique where the target population is first divided into mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive populations called cluster, and then a random sample of cluster is selected based on a probability sampling technique such as simple random sampling. So for each selected clusters, either all the elements are included in the sample or a sample of elements is drawn probabilistically. So what are the examples of this cluster sampling? So we have the earliest sampling and multi-stage. So what is the difference between the two? The first is that the clusters consist of geographic areas like the countries, housing tracts, blocks or other areas description. While the latter or the multi-stage, there is a grouping into hierarchy of units or the sampling is done consecutively. So those are the examples of probability sampling techniques. So let's proceed now to the non-probability sampling techniques. So we have this convenience sampling. So what is this convenience sampling? So it is a sampling technique that attempts to obtain a sample of convenient elements where the selection of sampling units is left primarily to the interviewer. So relying on available subjects such as stopping people on a street corner as they pass by is one method of sampling, although it is extremely risky and comes with many cautions. So the researcher must also take caution not to use results from a convenience sample to generalize to a wider population. So the next sampling technique under non-probability sampling is judgemental sampling. So it is a purposive or judgmental sample that is purposely selected based on the judgment of the researcher. For example, if a researcher is studying the nature of school spirit as exhibited at a school pep rally, he or she might interview people who did not appear to be caught up in the emotions of the crowd or students who did not attend the rally at all. So in this case, the researcher is using a purposive sample because those being interviewed fit a specific purpose of description. So in addition, we have also this what we call quota sampling. Sorry, what is this quota sampling? So the quota sampling is one in which units are selected into sample on the basis of pre-specified characteristics so that the total sample has the same distribution of characteristics assumed to exist in the population being studied. For example, if a researcher is conducting a national quota sample, there might be a need to know what proportion of the population is male and what proportion is female, as well as what proportions of each gender fall into different age categories, race or ethnic categories, educational categories, and so on and so forth. So in this case, the researcher would then collect a sample with the same populations as the national population. So we have also the snowball sampling. So what is this snowball sampling? So it can be recalled that a snowball sample is an appropriate uh, method to use in research when the numbers of a population are difficult to locate, such as homeless individuals, migrant workers, or undocumented immigrants. So a snowball sample is one in which the researcher collects the data on the few members of the target population he or she can locate, then asks of those individuals to provide information needed to locate other members of that population whom they know. So by obtaining referrals from referrals, this may be carried out in waves. So for example, if a researcher wishes to interview undocumented individuals, he or she knows or can locate and would then relay to those subjects to help locate more undocumented individuals. So this process continues until the researcher has all the interviews he or she needs or until all contacts have been exhausted. And we have also the purposive sampling. So what is this purposive sampling? So under this, uh, choosing individuals as sample according to the purposes of the researcher as his tools, and an individual is chosen part of this sample because of a good evidence that he or she is a representative of the entire or the total population. Now, those are the examples of sampling techniques under probability and non-probability sampling techniques. So let's proceed now to the target population or the subjects. So what is this all about? So a target population refers to the complete group of individuals or objects to which researchers are interested in generalizing the conclusions. So the target population typically has varying characteristics. So this is the collection of elements or objects that possess the information sought by the researcher and about which inferences are to be made. So in a feasibility study, the writer or the startup business owner has to explain how and where the subjects will be taken. So how about this research instrument? I guess that you have already a knowledge on what is this research instrument. Now, to recall, a research instrument is a tool for consistently executing a scientific procedure for obtaining data from the respondents. So the instrument involves a questionnaire that offers a draft for presenting a standard set of questions and response options. So it includes questions that address specific study objectives and may also be used to collect geographic information for calculating survey weights. So a difficult task in creating a questionnaire is translating the researcher's questions into items that are sufficiently brief and easy for the respondents to comprehend and afford the exact answers. So, what are the general questions to be indicated in the instrument? So, these are the questions. So, it should contain only one idea or question. Second, define the scope to consider, such as the time period or activities that are relevant to the question. Third, be written with natural language to avoid leading the respondents to specific answer. Fourth, use language that enables less educated persons to easily understand the questions. In fact, in actual practice, there is what we call the translation of the questionnaire. For example, English questionnaire into a lingua franca. For example, in Bisaya, so from English to Tagalog or from English to Bisaya or Cebuano, or it depends as to where the research is to be conducted. So whatever is the dialect in the locality, the questionnaire should be translated. It could be easily understood by the respondents. So fifth, it should contain response options that are simple, clear, consistent, and include the full range of responses that might occur. Six, for categorical responses, be mutually exclusive and exhaustive so that respondent can pick one and only one option. 7. For numeric responses, guide the respondent to provide the response in a specific, consistent, in a consistent format and units. So we have also this validation of instrument. Now, what do you understand with this validation of the instrument? So usually the procedure for validating the survey instruments requires at least 10 representatives of the sample. So these representatives try to answer survey instrument and make suggestions and comments, if any, for its refinement. So these suggestions, corrections, and refinement of the draft must be explained thoroughly. Also, in validating the instrument, the writer of the feasibility study might uncover inconsistencies or unexpected question interpretations. So, the different persons involved in the corrections and refinements must be mentioned. So, let's proceed to the data processing method. So after the retrieval of survey questionnaire, the researcher tabulates and processes the data either manually or by machine. So the use of the software for data analysis, particularly the statistical package for the social sciences or the SPSS versions 20 is recommended. So this SPSS is a comprehensive and flexible statistical analysis and data management solution. So it can take data from almost any type of file and then use to generate tabulated reports, charts, and plots and distributions and trends, descriptive statistics, and conducts complex statistical analysis. And also it is available from several platforms such as Windows, Macintosh, and the Unix systems. Furthermore, SPSS is used by virtually every industry, including telecommunications, banking, finance, insurance, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, consumer packaged goods, higher education, government, and market research. Now, for tutorial on the use of SPSS, please visit to the uh, link indicated in the on the screen. So I am showing you the sample survey instrument for a feasibility study. So this is an example of a survey questionnaire uh, a study entitled just potatoes. So as you can see, this survey sample survey instrument is lifted from the source indicated on the screen. So kindly read the sample survey instrument, and then this will help you a lot in formulating a draft of a survey instrument of your respective proposed feasibility study. So kindly go over the slides. Please read and get additional information from this instrument for you to come up your respective draft of your proposed feasibility study. So thank you and good day.